turn long way here.
Yeah, perfect.
This is good?
Yeah, it's perfect.
All right, awesome, man. How's everything been?
Good. It's been good. Been busy, but still kicking. How about you?
Yeah, all's been well. I got down here to Texas, I guess probably close to about 7 weeks now ago. We had preseason, which was kind of abbreviated. Some teams got going at different points in times this year because of COVID and stuff, but we've just been rolling. We're 2 games in now. Picked up a couple wins, but yeah, got all settled in and yeah, looking forward to the rest of the season.
Yeah, definitely. I really appreciate you taking your time to speak with me for a little bit because I know you're obviously busy, but I definitely appreciate it. Congratulations, by the way, on the win last night as well. I watched the game. It was definitely good. So that's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, it's been a strong start for us so far. We had I think our first 3 games are actually at home, so we wanted to try and get off to a good start, and so far so good. I think even as a team, no goals conceded so far. I think a couple of goals in the second half of both games have been able to kind of push us over the edge to get these wins, and know if we can just kind of keep trending in the right direction, just keep getting better as a team.
Yeah, awesome. So, to kind of begin this podcast, if you want to kind of talk a little bit about yourself and your journey, kind of from where you started to where you are now, so the people who listen kind of have an idea of who you are, and if you want
Yeah, how far back do you want me to go? You want me to kind of go back to
to,
even
up to you.
growing up, or more so like in college?
It's up to you. Whatever you want to share.
All right. I guess I could go to maybe about high school or so, because I think for me that was kind of more of like a pivotal point in this whole kind of now a career. But it was about my junior year of high school. I made the decision to play developmental academy instead of kind of just going the more kind of travel rec kind of high school route. I'd played high school soccer for 2 years, and my junior year, U.S. Soccer implemented the rule where they wanted us to, if you were playing developmental academy, kind of choose to do a 10-month season rather than kind of play your high school season, miss out on a couple extra months, and then go join your academy team around like Christmas time, November, or whatever. But I ultimately was playing baseball, soccer, and basketball, and made the decision to kind of go the soccer route my junior year. And that was kind of what pushed me into kind of choosing to try and go play soccer in college. And obviously ended up at Providence College up in Rhode Island. I spent 5 seasons there. I graduated in the spring of 2018, started in the fall of 2018. I finished up my undergrad degree and then came back to start a master's with my redshirt year. So spent 5 seasons up there, and then had an opportunity to go to the MLS Combine. Ended up going to the MLS Combine, going undrafted, and then ended up going on trial to Portland Timbers 2 for about 2 weeks. Didn't end up signing there, and then ended up over with Loudoun United and spent the greater half of 2 years with Loudoun United. And now I've recently signed with the Rio Grande Valley Toros of the USL Championship. So same division between Loudoun and Rio Grande Valley, just now in the Western Conference, and I've been in the Eastern Conference for the past couple seasons. So my 3rd year overall playing professionally, and hopefully have many more years to grow and keep playing.
Absolutely, that's awesome. So, it's interesting. That story and coming up because for my age group as well, or my time, I started academy very late or later as well than other people. So that's kind of cool. But so kind of the idea of this podcast is to help people who listen to inspire them not only to go after what they're passionate about in life, but also how to deal with like the setbacks, failing and learning along the way. So one of my, I guess, first questions is like, has there been a time where you expected something to go one way, and if it didn't, how did you respond to that in the way that in a positive way, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think the one moment that comes to mind is probably back in college. I think when I committed to Providence College, like I was really excited about the opportunity to go up there. And in my commitment and talking with head coach Craig Stewart and our goalkeeper coach Carl Spratt, we're both still there. And the conversation was more come in and compete, see where you end up. They had Kiesel Broom, who was going into his redshirt year and was a captain, leader of the team. So it was likely I would redshirt, but they wanted me to kind of come in and compete and be there in case something, happened to Kiesel. And we also had Ben Sedgwick, who was up there as well. So the 3 of us were just kind of competing. But when I came in, it was like a real kind of culture shock for me in terms of the team environment. Trying just to find my way in the group. Going away from home was a big change. Providence was about 8 hours from Bel Air, Maryland, which is where I grew up and spent my entire childhood. And going away to college was really the first big move for me. And so I was away from my family, and I think I had a certain mindset and vision for how things were going to start out and how at least my first season was going to play out for me personally. And once I got there, I think it all kind of changed. And when it changed for the better. I think I grew as a person. Obviously, physically, I was growing up a bit. I was young too. I was 17, so I was a little bit younger than some of the other guys I was with. So I think intellectually and as well as I think spiritually as well, I think I went through a bit of a transition, just trying to find my way. And I think even though I had that mindset, my mindset kind of clearly was coming in. I was going to be able to transition right in. The training environment was going to be maybe similar that I was coming from, but obviously you kind of know Carl Spratt a little bit as well. He's very intense. He wants things done at a high level all the time. Comes from that professional training environment, which I thought I kind of understood, but I had never been in one growing up. So I really had no idea, what that meant. But that was for me one moment in my life where I ended up coming in, not really knowing what I was kind of getting myself into, but figuring things out on the fly and just like sticking with it. And I think that's one thing, if I could just push that message, is not always maybe being able to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but knowing that it's there and just kind of day in and day out, still trying to be true to yourself, work hard, dig in, even when things kind of get tough, and just try and trust yourself. I think trusting yourself and the people around you, that they're giving you the right advice and that they're in your corner, even though they might be, trying to push you, they're trying to push you to be the best version of yourself.
Absolutely, that's awesome. That's awesome. And yeah, one of the things I was gonna say that I admired, or I still do, about you is from watching you play and from the times we've trained together, your ability to stay calm in very stressful situations. That's one thing that I think I noticed about you, especially when you play. The couple times watched you at Providence, was that you have the, like, I've noticed you'll see goalkeepers, and it helped me change my game as well. That when they're communicating and whatnot, they sound very panicked and they sound very, you can almost hear the stress coming from them. But whenever I watched you play, and this was something that stood out to me right away, was how calm you were. And you could, at least I could, I don't know, I could see you, like, everyone was calm, you were calm, there was no panic, and you just dealt with situations as they came. And so I'm interested to see, was that always kind of your vibe was playing, or is that something that developed over time?
Yeah, for me, it was something that I kind of always had, I think, more innate inside of me. I think when I was growing up, I was always a little bit more, I think, reserved, like didn't always like express myself all that much. But on the field, I kind of went through a bit of I guess more of like a change almost, where like I was very kind of calm off the field, but even sometimes it hurt me on the field because I would kind of bring sometimes that off the field mentality on the field, and I wasn't maybe performing at the highest level because I was just kind of like letting some things happen around there. I wasn't holding the people around me accountable the way I should be. And I was kind of like almost letting myself suffer, if that makes sense. But I think that mentality for me has always kind of gotten me to where I am today. I think being more, I think, constructive with the guys around me versus like kind of berating them or trying just to yell at them. Just to yell has never been my kind of persona. It's always been a little bit more laid back, trying to be calm, that calming presence that the guys in front of me can trust. And I think sometimes perceptionally, it doesn't always come off the right way because I don't wear my emotions on my sleeve all the time. And people may think that I don't care as much or that I'm not as invested into this, but I'm likely just as invested or I care more than people think. I think more times than not, but I usually just don't express it because it's just not me as a person. I think being more, I think, reserved and being a little bit more, I think, observant at times rather than just kind of acting off impulse and emotion, I think never really has gotten me very far. And I think you even see that around me too. The guys who do act off of emotion and impulse usually don't really get very far either because the guys around them start to kind of waver and they get stressed because you're stressed. And I think during times of adversity and anything like that, I think it's good to kind of remain calm because people can rally around that presence. But I think it's just something I've always had, and I think I could kind of thank a little bit more like my genetics My parents are a little bit more laid back, in reserve as well. But I think when it comes time to perform, I always try and like ramp it up and be ready for whatever's coming my way.
That's awesome. That's interesting because I can relate that a lot, relate to that a lot as well, because there's been times where coaches have been like, do you not care? And it's like, no, I do care, but I'm just more of a quiet person to myself. So this year, that's something that I really tried to work on. And I've been working on the season, trying to be more vocal and making sure that, I can perform at, like you said, at that higher level. But that's interesting you said that because I'm kind of the same way, very like chill. So I guess, like you said, sometimes it can translate to other people that, you don't care or whatever, but obviously that's not the case. So yeah, that's interesting. So um yeah, let's see. So basically now I'm just interested in hearing, so from when you started from Providence to where you are now, what has been the biggest unexpected challenges you kind of had to go through, or challenge that you had to go through?
For me, I think the biggest obstacle I had to overcome was coming out of college and going to the MLS Combine. And in my eyes, and talking to some of the people that were closest to me, and even people that I trusted, like their opinions that were just going to give me blunt, kind of honest reviews. I and the other people personally thought that I had a good combine and that it was going to be enough to at least get me drafted somewhere, at least get an opportunity. And that opportunity never came. And there was a good probably 10 to 14-day span where I really didn't know what was going to come next. And it was a lot different from in college, because in college you kind of look fall to spring, and even you go fall to winter to summer to spring, and you kind of, or spring to summer, and you kind of always know what is going to come next. You always have the next season to look forward to, you the fall, the spring, whatever it is. But at that point in time in kind of my career and my life, I really didn't know what was going to be next. I wasn't sure if soccer was going to be done, or if I was going to have an opportunity to at least go on trial somewhere with a club. And I wasn't sure where kind of my life was going to go. So I was training, working really hard. But even going back to I think my point on the first question, I didn't always kind of see that light at the end of the tunnel. But I kind of trusted that all my work and my body of work at Providence was going to be enough to try and get me an opportunity somewhere. And that opportunity did end up coming. But that for me was one point in my life where I really wasn't sure like where my life was going to go. Like, if soccer was going to be done, or if I was going to get a chance to kind of pursue this dream of mine that I've always had, as a kid, trying to be a professional soccer player and try and live this out as long as I can. But that was one moment that really for me was pivotal in my life.
That's interesting. And so I guess my next question off of that is that I think in order, like people who start with something and then they stick with it over the years. So like you wanted to be a professional soccer player. I find it interesting the courage and the amount of tenacity that it takes to get from point A to point B and then so on and so forth is incredible. So I find it interesting. Where did you feel like you kind of found that courage of like, this is what I want to do, and then like nothing is like, I'm everything I have and nothing's gonna, because that's, I find that interesting how some people, it's almost like some people have it and then some people don't have it. But the interesting thing is I think people can develop it. And that's kind of the point here at this is to say, all right, like if I'm not there, if I don't think like that or whatever, like maybe this is somewhere that I can get to that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I know what you're saying. I think for me, I think it even went back to like my junior year of college, where I ended up spending some of the summer in Detroit. I was playing for a club called Detroit City FC, which now playing in the NISA League, and I made a commitment there as well after coming off a really good fall season for us. We ended up going to the Elite Eight and won a Big East championship, and for me, I really enjoyed that whole experience, that whole ride. And so that summer, I decided to go out and play like in the NPSL, which was like a big commitment for like most of the summer. I was going to be away from home again, and usually the summer was a little bit of time where I could go back home. But at the time, I thought that I wanted to try and make the most out of my kind of soccer career, because I didn't really always know I wanted to try and play professional soccer. Even going into college, I just wanted to have a really good college experience, try and be the best version of myself, be the best goalkeeper I could be. But I think becoming a professional soccer player is always like kind of a long shot. So I didn't want to set that goal without like really knowing how I was going to navigate that water. But ended up going to Detroit City, kind of in being there for that summer was for me the turning point where I was like, all right, maybe I want to try and see if I can make this, a career. I can try and become a professional soccer player. So I kind of saw that was for me like the A, and then the B was I think the commitment to actually go and do it, because I think it's important too to be realistic with yourself and not always try and shoot for the stars if you don't have a launch pad or if you don't have a means to get there. But if if you do, and I think for me, I thought I did at the time, that I still had 2 years of eligibility left at school, and I was coming off a good season, and I wanted to try and make the most out of it. And so I kind of went all in to do it. And I thought that if it didn't work out, it didn't work out. But even at that time, coming out of college and not really sure where I was gonna go, I had made that commitment a couple of years prior to at least exhaust every single opportunity that I could. So then looking back on it, if things didn't work out, I could at least tell myself, well, I gave it everything I possibly could and it just didn't work out. And then I could live with that long term versus having any regret and having any thoughts of what if.
Mhm.
And what if I would have, pursued this for another couple weeks or another month or whatever it was, and I could have, done all this. Because even for me, when I finished up Providence in the fall of 2018 after my redshirt season, I was actually a graduate assistant at Providence College as well during my redshirt season. And so I was enrolled in the 2-year MBA program at Providence. So if soccer didn't work out, I had a plan B. And I think that's always important too. We were kind of just talking that like A to B. And for me, A was always professional soccer player. Let's see if I can do it since like my junior year of college. But if that didn't work out, I had plan B where I was going to return back to Providence. I had my graduate assistantship. I had my 2-year MBA program that I was enrolled in, and I was going to continue on with that. And so I wanted to, again, shoot for the stars, go for A, but I always had plan B. And that's always kind of been my mindset as well, having a backup plan, even if I want to try and pursue something else. But for me, if I pursued it and it didn't work out, then I was going to transition into something else. But now I'm still kind of living out plan A. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. That's all. And I think that's important as well because, like you said, something that was important to say is that you have to be careful. You don't always want to shoot for the stars if you don't have a plan, because I think sometimes people will be like, I want this, or like I want to say be a professional soccer player, but they're not putting in the necessary steps to eventually get to that level. And you know what I mean? Because it's almost like a process. And of course, one thing as I've gone up higher up the ladder in soccer is it's not always based on how it is based on how well you play, but there's a lot of other moving parts with agents, teams. There's a lot of other things. So at the end of the day, as long as you can put in the work, and if it doesn't work out, and you put the work in and everything, then I kind of relate to that. That you can kind of be like, all right, I gave it everything, and for whatever reason, it didn't. Um, Yeah, that was a really good point. So now I just kind of have a little bit more like on the field questions. What was it like to start in the U at Loudon? I believe you started playing some games, and what was that experience like?
Yeah, I can probably talk about my first game. It was like a little bit, I think, later in our season. It was probably around like the halfway point or so. We had a game down in Louisville, and I was our number two, and I was primarily our number two for a lot of games during that first season of mine. I ended up only playing in three. I started two, played in three, and I think it was at least a 32, if not maybe a 34 game season or whatever it was. It was a long year. And oftentimes, as a number two goalkeeper, being in an MLS organization, the number three goalkeeper from DC United at the time, who was Earl Edwards Jr., would come down and play games for Loudon, especially our home games. It would sometimes go on the road. So there was times where me as the number two with Loudon wouldn't even, travel to games or wouldn't be rostered for home games and things like that. So it was another period where I was really just kind of grinding away and I was just working really hard. I was fortunate to be in first team training with DC, and I would just train with Loudon, and it was just a lot of kind of wear and tear on the body, especially even mentally too. It's like
Mm,
when is an opportunity going to come? Because Callie Brown, who was in front of me with Loudon, really good goalkeeper. Played in the USL for a bit, has been on MLS rosters, and even Earl Edwards Jr., really good goalkeeper. He's with the New England Revs now, also playing some games with Revs too. So trying to learn from those guys, but also, hoping for an opportunity to come at some point as well. But an opportunity ended up coming down in Louisville. And so ended up being on the bench for the game. And Callie Brown, he got hurt. He ended up going for like a loose ball, took a knee to the side of the head, and ended up kind of going out for the rest of the game. So I subbed in the first half, and that was my debut. And so I got an opportunity there, kind of unexpected, and ended up kind of trying to make the most out of it. We ended up losing the game in the end to Louisville, 2-1. But for me, that was at least a really cool opportunity and experience to have, because I had, again, been working really hard, wanted to try and get an opportunity, and one finally came. And then I ended up starting another game later in that season, which actually ended up being the very next week, because Callie was still going through some protocol stuff. Earl wasn't available, played against Indy 11, and then ended up playing another game at the end of the year against Charleston Battery. So in that first season, I got 3 games in total. And then my second season, I ended up starting 7, which was this past year, kind of an abbreviated COVID season. And so we were supposed to have a full season, was cut short because of COVID. And we only ended up playing, I think for Loudon, we ended up playing, I think it was 12 games or 13 games or so. We are supposed to play 16, only ended up playing 12 or 13. And so, yeah, I have 10 games now kind of under my belt over these past 2 years. But the experience with Loudon was really fruitful. I got my obviously opportunities to play games, was able to be in the first team environment, learn from those guys and train at a high level. I think I definitely grew again as a player. And I think for me, that's what I'm just trying to do now. I know I'm still kind of in this product development stage, even making the decision to come down to Rio Grande Valley. I want to try and get games down here, but I'm behind Tyler Derrick right now, who has over 100 starts in the MLS. And we've started off really strong as a team. He's got 2 shutouts, playing really well, but he's also a goalkeeper that I feel like I can learn a lot from. And me only being 24, I still feel like I have a lot of my prime years left as a goalkeeper. Obviously still want to get games again this year, but for right now, games aren't everything, but they are something I still want to strive for. But I'm still trying to learn and develop as a goalkeeper, develop areas of my game, and continue just getting better.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that's interesting. I think it's cool to kind of see that progression, because it's the point was that you were like setting goals in your season, and as it goes on, I think that's interesting how like, or obviously still your goal is to start as everyone is, and then you're still having other goals in training and stuff. So that's awesome. And actually it's funny that you brought up Tyler Derek, because that was my next question. I was going to say, training with someone like that, what's the environment must be relatively intense. So what have you learned from situations like that?
Yeah, so far, Tyler and I have really, I think, pushed each other. I think from the very beginning, I think he obviously comes in with a good pedigree, a good resume. And I think even between the two of us, there's only the 2 of us under contract this year. And then we have some academy goalkeepers that'll rotate in. We've had a couple other guys just in training. So we usually have roughly 3 goalkeepers in training with us, sometimes 4. And then we have our goalkeeping coach. And so I think our goalkeeping coach, they really has to facilitate that environment. I think it comes down to him ultimately, like how much he wants us to try and obviously compete, what kind of sessions he's putting together for us. But it really comes down to how much Tyler and I want to push each other. And I think, again, I push him and then he will push me. But ultimately, kind of Arturo, the way I see it, Arturo kind of challenges me and holds me accountable, because we don't really have that true number 3
Mhm.
that would really push me, and kind of almost we push each other up the ladder. But I think Arturo pushes me, I push Tyler, and then we always I want to always give Tyler the impression that like I'm on his heels,
Mhm.
ready to try and win the job over, but knowing and kind of respecting his role and his position, within the team as well. But we want to try and push each other and create that competitive environment, because then we're all growing and we're all again striving for the same goal. We all want the team to do well, But I think from being in the environment already with Tyler, I think just learning kind of how he goes about his routines, daily, before training, during training, after training, how he handles himself, and just kind of how he goes about his business, I think is all things that I can take from him from the beginning of the season to the end of the season. It's all things that I can learn and just try and grow as a player.
Absolutely, that's awesome. So, yeah, my last questions for you is in the beginning of your soccer journey to where you are now, if you could give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Would it be a kind of advice that like I wish I would have had at a certain point in time or something like that?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think I don't know. I think it's a good question to kind of finish on because I think at like any given time, I think sometimes hindsight could be 2020. Looking back and thinking, maybe I could have or should have, done this differently. But I think one of the biggest messages that I think I could give to myself as well as other people is always just try and be true to yourself. I think no matter who you are, as a person or as a player, I think as a player first, I think everybody has their own strengths and weaknesses, and it's important to not try and be somebody who you're not. I think not trying to kind of see somebody, whether it's another professional or another person in your life who you think is, maybe above and beyond yourself, and then try and maybe mimic everything that they're doing because they're a completely different person. What works for them may not work for you, but you can still like be very successful. I think is important. And like whatever like my strengths are, I try and play to them in games and in training, but my strengths could be someone else's weaknesses and vice versa. But I think just again, always for me, just trying to be true to myself and be honest with myself and not, again, be over kind of optimistic, be over pessimistic. And I think that comes back to kind of my temperament and my mood is just always trying to approach every day the same with a good mentality, being positive. And I think that energy is contagious. I think positive energy and is good for whoever's around you. I think it can really bring the people up around you, even during times of adversity. But I think that would be one thing, just always looking back if ever I got too high or too low, just trying to always be true to myself and be level headed and just kind of enjoy this whole ride and trust the process and just enjoy the whole journey.
absolutely. That's awesome. So, yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. I know you're busy, so I don't want to take too much of your time up, but I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time to speak. It was nice to catch up a little bit. So I'm really happy for you. Your journey continuing and success. So I'm really rooting for you. I'll definitely be following you this season.
Well, thanks a ton. No, I really appreciate the opportunity to come on, and even I think I really enjoyed just being a part of the conversation here with you. And I'm excited to kind of follow your journey as well. I think I've been keeping up with some of the prior pods that you've been putting out, and I'm happy to kind of be another episode on here and hopefully kind of continue this for you and see where it goes.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course, man. Have a good rest of the day. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you as well.
Amen.
Bye.
Bye.